one of the hard disks has failed. That's why we got 3 in the server, because disks do sometimes fail. We're going to go and take that out of the server now and rebuild the RAID array controller with the 2 hard disks that still work.
Let's remove the failed hard disk from the base. And then move this disk down and place that in bay 2. There we go, that's got it. That's got that one in place. We're going to get a blanking plate off eBay to fill this gap.
Here in the array controller BIOS, we can create ourselves a new logical drive. What that means is we're going to make one drive that can be seen by the operating system from multiple disks. Physical disks are shown here under available physical disks, and we have got 2 available physical disks. And then on the right hand side, we've got the RAID configuration options that are available. I'm going with RAID 1+0 because that gives us redundancy. The one disk is written to the other and it's really quick. We've got an option below there for use a drive as a spare. Often I used to use that when I had multiple disks. So if one did fail, one would take over automatically as a spare. Enter enables us to create that. F8 saves it. We've created the logical drive. If you don't know what a RAID 1 setup is, you're about to find out. RAID stood for Redundant Array of Inexpensive Disks. Servers always had RAID arrays if you were building them right, because hard drives will fail. They were mechanical, magnetic, they span, and they overheated. Cut to the chase. One disk mirrors onto the other. It's a simple process. Every read and write on one disk goes onto the other disk. It was really quick because you had the writing speed of writing to one disk, and you had double the read speed because at any time the array could pick data from either one of the disks that wasn't busy at the time. RAID 1 was the #1 choice for the operating system disk. That's where Windows was installed. If you had a data disk or a disk that contained Exchange Server or a SQL Server database, you might have had a different setup of array disks. But for the purposes of what we're going to do, we're going to have one RAID 1 array at 72 gig, and that's what everything's going to get installed on. See, I told you this stuff got boring and complicated pretty quickly.
When I used to build these servers back in 2006, I could have used the Windows 2003 CD, stuck it in the CD-ROM, booted the server up, but that was always a really slow way of doing it because there was no integrated drivers. I'd have to go online and find everything once I got the operating system installed, even if I had the driver for the SCSI card, because that may not have been included on the Windows CD, so you couldn't have even got the operating system installed. But what we used to do was HP and many other different providers of servers had something that optimized the installation. It was called SmartStart CD with HP. Now, I haven't got a SmartStart CD for this server because they're pretty hard to find out there, and the ones that are on eBay cost a couple of quid. What I've done is got an ISO image off the HP's website, and that has been installed onto this USB stick, so we can boot from this USB stick and go through the process of using the SmartStart CD. When I used to build the servers, I was always up against time pressure, always, because the customer had ordered the kit and they wanted the kit in as soon as possible. And so my lead times for a server were maybe a week. And of course, I had everything else that was going on in the MSP at the time, repairing other things, computers, problems, phones ringing. It was pretty stressful. So the sooner I could get a server built, the better for me. Right, let's get cracking now and I'll show you how we get it done.
Installing Windows 2003 on real hardware isn't just retro, it's actually a test in patience and what the real world was like when I used to do this work. I'm going to put the stopwatch up against the server and we're going to install Windows 2003 using SmartStart and see how long it actually takes to get it done. We'll be lucky if there's a progress bar that lies to us about what the time is. So this is it. 90% of my IT career is waiting. People think it's fixing stuff all the time, but it wasn't. Loads of it was waiting, watching spinning wheels or watching egg timers, waiting to see whether you'd been successful with something or had it crashed. You had to have a load of patience because if you didn't, you might interrupt something before it was finished. You haven't sat through a deployment until you've seen SmartStart running at 800 by 600, which is exactly what we're going to do now. It's going to run over at KVM, so it's going to go all slow and it's going to go all jerky and the mouse didn't move where you want it to, and you'll notice all this when we go through it. And this was just part of the life of pain of working in IT in the early noughties. Let's add a reboot counter to this and see how many times the server reboots before we've actually installed Windows 2003. SmartStart seems kind of quaint looking back on it now, but it really did make a massive difference to the work that we were doing. You'd do most of it probably in a text file now and send that with the installation and slipstream it together into one installation. But back then, this just cut the right amount of time that you needed to save, and you could leave it on the workbench, hop off and do something else. And that made all the difference. SmartStart was a bit like a robot vacuum cleaner. You see one, you want one, it looks like it's the best thing in the world. It does a basic job, but at the end, you still need somebody else to clean up the real mess that's underneath the sofa and behind the chairs. And it was the same with the installation. It got us so far, it saved us a bit of time, but you still had to get in there yourself and finish the work. Windows Setup would now convert FAT32 partition to the NTFS partition. I'd asked for NTFS because that's the right partition for a server operating system. It supported files over 4 GB and it supported partitions over 32 GB. But the Windows installation process always started out with FAT32. And the reason for that was it made this process faster. Microsoft started with a quick partition system, which was FAT32. Then when they got past the text part of the setup, it was converted to NTFS that allowed for access control lists and permissions. And that's the reason why you saw FAT32 convert to NTFS. If you're watching this and you're in the USA, it's not going to have any relevance to you. But in the United Kingdom or other countries, we always found that Windows was a bit obsessed with United States settings. Now here on the screen, it's going to offer me to change my language settings. I'm going to have a bit of a battle now with it to get them to change to United Kingdom. Every time you tried to change it to United Kingdom, it would try and switch it back again. I'm honestly surprised I didn't see a bald eagle at some point. So first you set the location and then the regional options. Then you click on Advanced and then it's back at it again, United States. So you have to change that to the United Kingdom. Then you think, right, at this point, the keyboard's bound to be set to the UK, isn't it? It's bound to. Talk about making it difficult for us Brits. Anyway, here's the trick. You remove the United States, then you go down to apply, and guess what? No, we're not having any more of that silliness. What we're going to do here now is remove it again, and then it's finally gone, and we are stuck to being United Kingdom, which is what we want. How much effort was that? Next up is naming the server. I saw too many servers named planets like Saturn, Jupiter, or Simpsons character names. Ridiculous. Simple naming convention. That's what you want. And then the administrator password. And don't anybody say anything in the comments about it 4 characters long. It's for simplicity while we're doing the video. I wouldn't have normally done it that short. I'm not saying Windows was obsessed with forcing American settings on you, but At this point, you were asked if you wanted to join the computer to a domain or make it part of a work group. I would always make it part of a work group because I was installing it in the office, not on site where the domain would be. But what sort of made you chuckle was this bit on the screen that you could say here that says, you may need to obtain this information from your network administrator. Yeah, you're definitely going to need to obtain that information because you're going to have a bloody chance in hell of actually getting connected to the domain if you don't have the information. And what person would be installing a server and wasn't the network administrator at the same time? I don't know, maybe I've been a big corporate that would have existed. But in the small business world, you were everybody. You were a jack of all trades, so it was you anyway. Let's put this into a work group. The reason you've been plunged into darkness here is my mistake. Installing Windows 2003 isn't just a task, it's an actual commitment. And I wasn't watching the screen for long enough, and the screensaver's kicked in on my Vista VM machine. I can only imagine at this point that you wished I'd done this on a virtual machine instead of a physical box, but it can't be long now, I promise you. At last, a login screen. Finally, we get to interact with the server. Oh, yeah. Also, we've got to put the other CD in now, CD2 for Windows 2003 server, and then that finally installs the last bits off the second CD, and we're in a position to actually log in and get to the desktop. HP support tools. We'll be using those shortly, and we will see one of the most fun features of Windows 2003, Internet Explorer Enhanced Security Mode. There we go, the final reboot. The operating system is installed. In some ways, it feels like weeks since I started this process with the physical server and everything. We've got to this point. There it is on the screen. I can't install the updates because they don't exist online anymore, so there's no point connecting those for the purpose of what we're doing. The process is completed, and we can move on to the next step of configuring the server. Stop the clock! 45 minutes, 57 seconds. The total time to install the server. 39 minutes was the longest ever single release in the United Kingdom by the Orb in 1992, and they released the Blue Room, which was 39 minutes long. You could have listened to the entirety of the Blue Room by the Orb and also cooked yourself a 6-minute hard-boiled egg and a set of soldiers at the end of that process in the time it's taken us to install the server today. If you've never heard any of the Orbs music, including the Blue Room, I strongly suggest that you get into YouTube after you've watched all my videos and have a look, because you might just like it.
Okay, so the Windows 2003 server is up and running. In the next video, we're going to tackle something that IT people really dread. That's backup and recovery. We're going to be getting the DDS7 drive cleaned up, and we're going to install very fast Backup Exec, which was the backup software I used for backing up customers' systems. We're going to go through the trials and tribulations of getting it onto the tape, how long it takes to get it on the tape, and then getting it back onto the server for a complete recovery. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Ta-da!